to the love that has laid hold of me. I'm holding on to the love that has laid.
Good morning, FCF. This is our very last session in The Secret of Adequacy, and it's a quite wonderful text. It's one that I have shared many times through the years, but I always love sharing it because it's just packed so full. It's once again, the Spirit of God is using the Apostle Paul, and it's from the book of Philippians. In the book of Philippians, Paul is imprisoned. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die. He doesn't know if Nero is going to have him beheaded. And yet he talks more about joy and rejoicing in this book. It's just a 4-chapter book. He repeats it nearly 16 times. This is a man that we can learn a lot from about finding adequacy in some of life's most challenging times. So I'm going to start by reading what he says in chapter 4, verse 13. Then I'm going to kind of backtrack to give it a little additional meaning. In Philippians 4:13, the Apostle Paul, writing to followers of Christ living in Philippi, says this. He says, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Other translations read it this way, I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me. So that's quite a statement. Paul says, I don't care what life dishes out to me. I'm adequate. I'm adequate to deal with it. I'm adequate to do anything, but I'm not adequate to deal with it because of who I am, because of my ability, because of my strength, because of my resilience. I'm adequate to do this. And he's speaking with tremendous confidence. The man doesn't know if he's going to live or die. He says, I'm adequate to face whatever I have to face through Christ who strengthens me. So his adequacy came from a strength that was not his own. It was his union with Christ. It was his trust in Christ. It was his confidence in Christ, his reliance on Christ, his living from a life centered in Christ that inspired him, energized him, gave him the perspective that he needed and the courage that he needed to face whatever life dished out. Now, listen to the verses that go before, and you'll see how diverse his experiences were and why he could say what he said in verse 13, why he could say with such confidence, I can do everything. I can deal with whatever life dishes through Christ who strengthens me. Listen to what he says beginning in chapter 4, verse 11. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned, listen to this, I have learned, what have you learned, Paul? I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. This is an incredible statement. The man says, now mind you, he's in prison and he's writing to the Philippians and he doesn't know if he's going to be executed. And he says, I'm not writing because I have a personal need here. He says, I've learned. He says, I've learned by experience. He's been following Jesus for a long time. He says, I've learned by experience to be content in any circumstance. Oh, wait a minute, Paul. I mean, what kind of circumstances have you been in? I mean, it's easy to say you've learned to be content if you've had a cushy life. Well, he explains further. Listen to what he says in the next verse. I've learned to be content in all circumstances. Verse 12. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret. It's a really interesting word, Greek word there. It's only used once in this place. It talks about a secret initiation. I have learned the secret of being content, He uses it again. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. What kind of situations, Paul? Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. So Paul is acknowledging, he said, even though I'm a loyal servant of Christ, I got to tell you the truth. There have been times in my life where I didn't have what I felt like I needed. I was in want. And there were times in life when, as a servant of Christ, I was hungry. He said, but I learned a secret. It was by going through those times when I wanted things and didn't have them, and I was even hungry, I learned the secret that Christ is enough to get me through. And then he talks about, he says, but I've also had seasons of plenty. I've had abundance. He said, and I've learned that in those seasons too, Christ is enough. Listen carefully. Paul learned the secret that we must learn in this life. My contentedness, my satisfaction, my fulfillment, your contentedness, your satisfaction, your fulfillment, my adequacy, your adequacy, it is not when I get what I need or think I need, or I get what I want or I think I want. It's not when I get all my desires met. You are not going to get all your desires met in this life, nor am I, nor does anyone. In this life, no one gets all their desires fully met. Jesus promises that in the age to come, your desires, my desires, will be eternally met. But in this age, he's working on other things. This is training time. This is character development time. Paul says, I learned a secret of adequacy, that no matter what I was going through, I was in the worst of circumstances. I didn't have what I wanted. I didn't have what I needed. And then there were times when I had an abundance, but I learned in any and every situation the secret of being content. And it was this: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. As long as Christ is with me, as long as I stay focused on Him, as long as I'm trusting in Him, as long as I'm relying on Him, as long as I'm drawing strength from Him, as long as I am being inspired. Human beings were meant to live on the fuel, the spiritual fuel of inspiration. God alone can inspire adequately. He infuses His life in us. We start to see things the way He sees them. We start to feel about things the way He feels. We start to be empowered to do the right, the good, the sacrificial things. Paul says, I can do whatever I need to do. I can deal with whatever I need to deal with, not because of me, my adequacy, the secret of my adequacy. It's in Christ. Are you in need? Are you in want? Are you in a season of abundance? The secret of adequately navigating whatever season you and I are in and still being content is to learn that Christ can enable us to do whatever it is we should do, whatever it is we need to do in any and every circumstance. That's the final lesson in an 8-week journey in the secret to adequacy. I hope it's been a blessing to you.
To the love that has laid hold of me. I'm holding on to the love that has laid